Republican and Democratic lawmakers often like to take and cultivate a tough-on-crime image. That's certainly true in the legislature and almost a guarantee when it comes to candidates for district attorney. But there's another side to that policy. A recent Albuquerque Journal article highlighted the 12th Judicial District, where public defenders say they're buried by nearly 300 felony cases that are scheduled for a 4-week period starting later this month. Now, the DA down there, that's Alamogordo and Ruidoso, by the way, says his prosecutors have to prepare for those cases too. And the chief judge says most of those trials won't actually take place. But Laura, you're kind of a natural place to start here. Do the public defenders have a point about being able to prepare an effective defense? Let's just start with the real basics of law here.
Oh, absolutely. I think they have a very valid point. You know, we're talking about something like 24 trials or 24 different hearings in a day.
Right.
So it's unclear which ones of those would actually be dismissed or postponed and which ones would move forward with trial. There's just no way to sort of know that from a preparation standpoint. So one of the points they bring up is they have to be prepared for every trial,
right,
which makes it very, very difficult to provide an adequate defense. Now, on the flip side, the prosecutor is also in a similar situation, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of coordinating potential witnesses, talking about, law enforcement, other eyewitnesses, whoever is part of the docket. I mean, I think somebody said this, it was a circus-like atmosphere.
Right.
I can imagine that because you just don't have that level of resources. And these are areas, I've actually had cases down there before, not in criminal, but in civil case when I was in private practice. Mm-hmm. And, they're very small courtrooms. Everybody pretty much knows everybody in terms of the staff. And it's going to be very difficult for them to be able to do this adequately. So I think it is a crisis-like situation and not a unique one to the 12th Circuit, which is Alamogordo, Ruidoso, you mentioned, mm-hmm. But could also occur in a lot of other areas around the state.
Mm-hmm. Julianne, Laura just mentioned the nightmare scenario. We got reporting that people are waiting in their cars each day to find out if they'll be needed to be a juror or a witness. I mean, that's not tenable. And certainly it's not ideal, but does it seem like prosecutors are overcharging? Is that part of the problem here?
I mean, that's certainly a point that, Bennett Bauer, the chief public defender, raised with respect to this 12th Judicial District. Again, this is in that, crime and punishment part of the state, mm-hmm. in, southern New Mexico and Otero and Lincoln counties. And I think that, that argument, without really looking at the data and the kind of cases that are being presented, it's really hard to make it an outside judgment of that. Mm-hmm. But definitely in that journal story, the prosecutor there, the district attorney, is not an apologist for that. He says, this is what people want. They want me to throw the book at these, suspected alleged criminals, and they don't want me to make plea deals. Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting. This is not universally the way that district attorneys feel. Santa Fe elected Mary Carmack Outwise here. Again, the data is kind of not there yet because it's new. Mm-hmm. But our district attorney up here, Rio Arriba, Los Alamos, and Santa Fe County, has said, let's keep people out of the court system. Right. Let's divert people who are facing, small charges that are related to drugs and behavioral health. And I think that her perspective about that is really gonna, we'll see if that changes things. Mm-hmm. That's quite different from what the guy in the 12th is saying.
Isn't that interesting? That distinction. Go ahead, Laura. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not really surprising. You get elected from a certain area. Mm-hmm. Santa Fe is what it is. That entire area is pretty liberal. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but mm-hmm. they're progressives, right? They're going to be very different on crime than some of these rural areas. And so the district attorneys, unfortunately, because of the type of system that we have where they get elected, they're going to reflect what their electors are wanting from them, or else they're not going to be elected again. Right? You have people that are tough on crime on the one hand, on the other hand are messaging the way Santa Fe is. Here in Albuquerque, we see sort of a hybrid of the two, but ultimately people here want to see tough on crime also, mm-hmm. right? More so probably than Santa Fe. So I think this kind of reflects the diversity of our state. And it's very difficult for some of these prosecutors to see where that fine line is, right? Mm. Where you need to do your job, but you also need to make sure that you're reflecting whatever your electors want from you.
Interesting points there. Tom, the DA previously mentioned Scott Key on apology. unapologetically said nobody pleads guilty to something they didn't do, which is kind of ridiculous because that's just wrong. We've seen that time and again for all kinds of reasons. In this situation, that caseload means there's a natural tendency to consider what Julie mentioned earlier, a plea deal. Doesn't it? I mean, do all roads not lead to more plea deals here?
Oh yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I mean, the numbers are just staggering, and it's great to see Ollie Uterbrook with the Albuquerque Journal getting some of this in-depth type of coverage and stuff. But 276 felony jury trials in a 4-week period. That's just mind-boggling. And so what that tells me is that there are a lot of plea deals, and I think Matt Chavez, when he said that do innocent people get convicted? Absolutely. And so, that's really concerning because, you have folks who are, were arrested for a reason or cited for a reason, but they don't necessarily have a chance to really defend themselves the way that they want to in court. And so as a result, you have folks who will plea bargain out for a lesser sentence just to get on with their life. And that, I think, is not a good reflection of the justice system at all.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think it's really important to note, too, that the root of this is about fully funding the judiciary.
Thank you.
But speedy trials are a real thing that people are, allowed to expect under the Constitution. And when you are trying to cram the public defender's office into adequately defending, you're trying to, cram all this stuff in and there's not enough money. That's really the problem here. And that is something that our government can act on.
Laura, let me follow up on that. That's a very good point. I know you know this, but for the folks watching, if you haven't seen felony arraignments, especially here in Albuquerque or at a busier court, it's really quite something. I mean, the word circus came up with attorneys on both sides wheeling stacks and boxes of case files in and out. Sometimes they've only given the briefest look to those things. Are we pushing too much to the court, Laura? Should we just expect that, this is the natural result of pushing all this to the courtroom?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of problems with our system, I think, and the backlog in the courts is one of them. There's just an inadequacy of resources across the board, and so you have, from the officers and the arresting, agencies to processing at the jails to the actual court staff, the judges. Everybody is overwhelmed, and the public defenders in particular are also extremely understaffed. Very difficult to keep people employed in those positions too, because there's such high burnout because of this kind of process. So you end up having folks who are in those jobs that are not staying for very long. They develop an expertise. They go out and they see greener pastures elsewhere. So it is a very, very huge problem, and one that I think Julie brings up an important point. We could address this, and there should be more attention paid to funding the judiciary adequately, as well as other, law enforcement agencies.
Hey, Tom, quick question. Do policymakers really need to rethink what it means to be tough on crime? Is that what's going on here as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think we have to redefine what that soundbite really means. Is it? So yeah, I think that there's always an opportunity to kind of, not just use that soundbite, but say, okay, what exactly does that mean?
Right.
Does that mean more arrests? Does it mean more convictions? Does it mean, and to Julianne's point, it's really, properly funding the judiciary has been something that has been an issue for the last, 10 years. And stuff. So, that I think is one of the roots of the issues. The other is that, you have, varied elected officials, different parts of the state who all have a different, watermark about what that means being tough on crime.
Julianne, last word. I got a minute on this, on tough on crime. Same question. Something just has gone off the rails here with this idea?
Certainly. I mean, I think I mentioned before that I feel like this is a buzzword that's used by a certain segment of voters. It's certainly coded language. We know that our criminal justice system has been unfairly implemented on, name the group. I think that we have a lot of work to do on that front, and the definition of tough on crime doesn't really further the conversation. So I'm curious to see, what will unfold in New Mexico as we explore different ways to deal with this. I think all of these ideas are antiquated, and we don't do ourselves a service by just, sticking with the existing paradigm.
Sure. Good last word there. Hey, thanks to all of our panelists for their research and thoughts this week. Remember, you can always let us know what you'd like to see on the show by catching up with us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.